My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, in my previous discussion of relationship of an individual with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we discussed various ayats of the Holy Quran indicating different relationship an individual can have with his creator. We discussed such ayat as Allah waliyul lazina amanu, and we expanded on the meaning of the friendship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We also discussed such ayats as Inna allazina qalu rabbuna Allahu summa istaqamu tatanazzalu alayhim al-malaikatu alla takhafu wa la tahzanu. And then we moved on to Ya ayyuhatun nafsul mutma'in irji'i ila rabbika radiyatan mardiyya fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. I don't have the time to go into the meaning and discussion of those ayats, but that gives you some idea of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the various relationship He has with His creation. Today's subject matter is directly related to my previous discussions. And what we're going to be discussing today is how do you go about establishing that relationship with your Creator. What spiritual stages an individual goes through to develop a perfect communion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is mentioned in the following verse of the Holy Quran. Bala man aslama wajhahu lillahi wa huwa muhsinun falahu ajruhu inda rabbihi wa la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. An individual goes through three different stages, three different spiritual stages before he develops a perfect communion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first stage is that of stage of fana. The second stage is stage of baka. And the third stage is stage of laka. Stage of fana, stage of baka, and stage of laka. Three stages. Those three stages are described in this very verse of the Holy Quran, which I just recited. Bala man aslama wajhahu lillahi. Verily, whoever focuses his entire attention towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa huwa muhsinun, and he performs ihsan. فَلَهُ أَجْرُهُ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ وَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. He will be at perfect peace with himself and with his environment. The first stage of fana is described in the first part of this ayat, Bala man aslama wajhahu lillahi. An individual that focuses his entire attention towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the very word indicates fana, there is a certain kind of fana that comes upon this individual. A fana for worldly life, a fana for materialistic life, a fana of the luster and chamak dhamak of this life. And as this individual is trying to establish a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ وَالْقَنَاطِيرِ الْمُقَنطَرَةِ وَالْفِدَّةِ وَالْخَيْلَ الْمُسَوَّمَةِ وَالْأَنْعَامِ وَالْحَرْثِ, and so on and so forth. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning all the different attractions that a human being has for this material life. He mentions the love of women. He mentions the love of children. He mentions the love of mal dolat, love of all gold and silver, and love of all the crops, love of all the horses, etc., etc. All those things that an individual loves in this material life. As this individual is gradually developing a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leaving his material life behind him, step by step, day by day, he is stuck between the two magnets. On one hand, there is a magnet of materialistic life that's pulling him towards this dunya. On the other hand, there is a magnet of love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's trying to pull him towards his creator. And this individual is trying to fight between those two magnets. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to mention, قُلْ وَنَبِّئُكُمْ بِخَيْرٍ مِّن ذَلِكُمْ لِلَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا عِندَ رَبِّهِمْ جَنَّاتٌ تَجْرِي مِن تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is offering a path for the individual to conquer this fight between the magnet of the worldly love and the magnet of love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the path that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is offering you is path of taqwa. لِلَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا عِندَ رَبِّهِمْ taqwa. Path of taqwa. That path of taqwa is going to help you accelerate your journey towards the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does taqwa mean? Taqwa means as you are going through a garden that's full of rose bushes, you are being very careful not to get stuck with the thorns of the roses. And you're trying to collect your salwar kameez, you're trying to collect your pajama, you're trying to collect your pants, lest you get stuck by these thorns, they will hurt you. So you're tiptoeing through the rose garden. That is exactly what taqwa is. Taqwa means you are tiptoeing through the path of life, observing all the do's and the don'ts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what taqwa is. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is offering you a path how you can develop a perfect communion with Him, and that is the path of taqwa. As you adapt the path of taqwa, the attraction towards material life will start getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And the magnet that's pulling you towards worldly life, materialistic life, keeps getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And the magnet of love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's pulling you towards your Creator keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And as a certain degree of self-annihilation, of fana, comes over you for the materialistic life, the love of the life of this dunya is gradually leaving your heart. Is gradually leaving your heart. And there is a vacuum created in your heart as this process moves on. And instead of love of dunya, slowly and gradually, step by step, drop by drop, the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is filling that vacuum within your heart. And towards the culmination of this stage, your entire heart is free of love of materialistic life, and the vacuum that it creates, the entire vacuum is filled with the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now you have reached the culmination of the stage 1 of the spiritual development of communion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, you cannot achieve that communion perfectly unless you go through the second stage of spiritual development, which is called the stage of Baka. That is mentioned in the second part of the ayat. Bala man aslama wajhahu lillahi wa huwa muhsinun. The stage of ihsan. Ihsan is basically the love of people of God. My dear brothers and sisters, you will never achieve a perfect communion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unless and until you also become perfect in the service of mankind. Those two prongs of spiritual processes have to run together, parallel, in tandem, in order to achieve perfect communion with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ihsan can be described in some way. There is some inferior type of ihsan, some more superior type of ihsan. The example of the inferior type of ihsan is the relationship between the mother and the children. This is the most inferior type of ihsan. And the reason why I call it inferior, because this is inculcated within the nature of the mother, that she must take care of her children, even if she doesn't want to. This is mother nature. And therefore it is involuntary, it's not voluntary. That's why its value is not as much. On the other hand, the ihsan that you perform with the greatest value in life is when somebody has tried to harm you, somebody has tried to kill you, somebody has tried to torture you. In return, you serve this person kindly and gently. That is the most superior type of ihsan. The example of that we see in the life of the Holy Prophet at the time of Fatah Makkah. When the Holy Prophet conquered Makkah, not one single drop of blood was shed. The world history fails to give another example of such a conquer. People like Abu Sufyan, people like Hinda were also pardoned. The Holy Prophet said, whoever takes a refuge in the house of the Abu Sufyan will be completely pardoned. A woman like Hinda was completely pardoned. This kind of amnesty, the world history fails to show in any other example of such an amnesty. This is the most superior type of ihsan performed by the Holy Prophet. And as the individual is going through the process of serving mankind, he is developing some of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within himself.